Previously on Jaylen Cavil, the interview.
So I was born in Kansas City, Kansas area. I've never liked the cops.
Black Americans are far more likely to be stopped than white Americans.
It's only furthered my distaste for police and, pushed me further to where I'm at today, which is thinking that, police need to be abolished.
And now, part 2.
So walk me through when you came to Iowa and the kind of work you were doing shortly before George Floyd was murdered.
So I was working on a political campaign here in Iowa. So like I said, I had studied politics and strategic communications, kind of come from more of a political background, and had been working on campaigns in Kansas some. And then right when I graduated from college, I was starting to look for jobs and had found a job up here in Iowa working on a U.S. Senate campaign. So that's why I, moved after I graduated and started that job. So I worked for that campaign, U.S. Senate campaign, for about a year. And then that primary for the campaign, it was a Democratic primary, was June 2nd of 2020. So we lost the primary and I was laid off from my job then. And that kind of like almost exactly lined up with right when the protests started.
Tonight, cries of Black Lives Matter and Hands Up, Don't Shoot. Hands up, don't shoot! Echoing from coast to coast. The largest day of demonstrations for George Floyd yet. In Washington, crowds stretching from the Lincoln Memorial to Black Lives Matter Plaza in front of the White House. From the East Coast, marchers demanding action in New Jersey.
No more silence.
And across New York City, where our Chris Jansing is.
In New York, thousands of people coming out today, peaceful gatherings in parks like this, marching through the streets for yet another day. Even though many protesters say they're tired, they're determined to force change.
That first night, I was, watching the live streams. I was, watching the live streams from the beginning of the protests until like 4 a.m. Like just on my phone in my room, not sleeping, just watching these live streams of these protests, wishing I was out there at the protests. Seeing people really like rise up in the streets and being like, wow, this is like something different that we have not seen like in a really long time. Like the amount of energy that was out there, the amount of people, and then just seeing it start spurring up in all these other cities around the country. And I was just, so tapped in, just like completely started to like zone out and get away from like the work mindset and just like checked out of the campaign, honestly, for like the last week, and was just like full like focus on what's happening with these protests, or what's happening with the, George Floyd and the reaction from across the country, and wondering like, when is some stuff going to start happening here in Des Moines? Like, I want to be out there protesting. And yeah, that really just like consumed all of my headspace for that time, right around the end of May, like until the campaign ended. And, protests started, I think what the first protest here was May 29th, I think.
29th.
We're here to enforce the fact that these people are servants of us. They believe they're above reproach. They believe that they're above the will of the people. And that's what we're here to reiterate, that they are not, and that we're going to hold them accountable, and we're going to enforce them to do their job.
I feel like now is the time for revolution, and when it happens, I want to be part of it.
You know, when things started popping off, police started getting violent and stuff like that. I was out there the whole time, and I was like, yeah, this needs to keep happening. And you know, went out the next day, started like leaving work early just to go to the protests. And even like election day, like, you know, all I could think about is like the protests that are happening.
At that time, was it Black Lives Matter, and was the organization itself starting to like form? And
I mean, kind of. I think the first like week of protest was really just like pure like, this is where we're gonna meet at, and the protest is popping off. It wasn't, you know, organized. There's no like, you know, list of speakers or, you know, stated demands or anything. No one even knows where the protest is coming from, right? I would just see it on social media, like time and place, and everyone's there. And so that's kind of how it was for the first week, and it wasn't really organized, and there wasn't, you know, people who were, I guess, leading the protests or trying to get people organized and have you know, demands and stuff like that, and you know, worrying about people's safety and things like that. It was just kind of, you know, some chaos. Like people were angry, and it was just pure emotions and protests, and police responding with, you know, aggression and violence, which only fuels the people who are protesting more and makes people more mad, and it's just going and going. You know, during that first week when all that was happening, it was, you know, a lot of the same people who were showing up night after night after night. And certain type of people, I guess, have the personalities where you're going to be up there in the front, like on the front lines. You're going to grab a megaphone if it's going around and give a little impromptu speech, or you're going to start up a chant or something like that. So people start recognizing that, and we just kind of formed, people just started forming together. The first like Des Moines BLM protest wasn't until June 3rd, which was like the march to Frank County's house.
And we are live outside Mayor Frank County's house, where this large protest, this large march ended tonight. This neighborhood really laid out the red carpet for these protesters. Even Mayor Frank County himself, you see the sign at his house that says, "I hear you, I see you, Black Lives Matter." He addressed these protesters.
I want to thank you for this peaceful protest. I think you guys are out there. I hear your hearts. I hear your pain. I thank you for doing it in a peaceful way.
You might have to hold it. You might have to
and let's continue that.
Like, I was just one of those people that were out there every day, you know, on the front lines and you know, yelling loud and starting chants and stuff like that. And was just kind of like, yeah, brought into it with other people who I had met there that were like, hey, you know, we're gonna have a meeting tomorrow, and we're gonna talk about like getting organized and having our own protests and like getting things like really organized in the city. Do you want to come? And I was like, yeah, I'm definitely down. And so I was brought in, and from there we started really as a real, I guess, organization of folks who are all committed to the same agenda and who want to bring about change in the city.
Join us for the series finale, Part 3. You're under arrest.
Oh, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything.